directly across from where you see the Arizona Memorial, the USS Utah. You probably won't be able to see it because it's a restricted area. But the USS Utah and the Arizona are the only two ships that's still here from that December 7th attack. So you family, you members, you fire department, police department, people from New York, I as a New Yorker know what it is to go through 9/11. And I say to you all, aloha and enjoy your stay in Hawaii. Thank you.
Clark was wonderful. He did that impromptu. I just asked him in the last 15 minutes if he'd be willing to do that, and he's a wonderful guy. So he'll give you his address, so if you want to go visit him. Anyway, we're really happy you're here today, and I just wanted to explain a little bit about the program so you know what you have in store for you. You'll first see a 23-minute documentary film that then will be followed by the boat ride to the memorial. We'll take 150 people on the first program that will begin at 2:30, and then the other 150 people will begin at 2:45. Until that time, you have time to explore our museum and exhibits. And then also I need to remind those with children in strollers and baby backpacks that those will have to be placed in the front lobby because they cannot go in the theater or on the boats. So for those parents, you got to carry your babies and children. It's just a real pleasure and honor to have you here this week. And if you get the opportunity, I know many of you met some of the survivors last night at the Hilton, but any of these gentlemen that have that white hat on, those are the survivors, and I'm sure they'd like to greet and meet you. So if you get the opportunity, just go up and introduce yourselves to them. They're special just as you are. We welcome you to the USS Arizona Memorial, and we thank the 25th Infantry Army Band that's back there for welcoming you. Also in the front we have a newspaper that's for this week's events. It's a souvenir newspaper for the 60th anniversary, so we invite you all to take one of those. And I know for all of you, the program is 1 hour and 15 minutes, so the restrooms are on the left, or my left, over there. Very important place to stop, especially with children. And you have about almost 45 minutes. We'll be giving you the tickets at the door to the theater, which is on my right. It's up.
Great pride that the 25th Infantry Division Tropic Lightning Band dedicates today's concert to our honored guests. It is now my privilege to introduce to you the commander and conductor of the 25th Infantry Division Tropic Lightning Band, Chief Warrant Officer 3, Michael M. Walker Sr.
become part of our ohana, and ohana in Hawaiian means family. And Phil and his family, and Jean, his lovely wife, have become part of our ohana. And Phil's pretty special. He'll tell you his story, but I don't know if, he's a hero. And what he did on December 7th, 1941 is one of the most courageous things I think I've ever heard. There's some critics in the audience, his best man and his lovely wife, who were married 10 days before the attack, and Phil was their best man at their wedding 10 days before the attack. And they're still friends. Anyway, I'm gonna let Phil Rasmussen tell his story. And I hope you get a chance to ask him a few questions at the end of the presentation. Welcome, Phil Rasmussen.
This is a little different situation than what you've seen here today. This is, I'm going to be telling you about my experiences at Wheeler Field, which is the major Army base north of here as the crow flies about 9 miles. On December 6th, I had a friend of mine, pilot friend of mine, and we picked up a couple of gals for dates, and we were out swimming on Kapuka and some of the pretty wild places on the beach. And I went to Trader Vic's, which was a famous nightclub at that time. And we left Trader Vic's sometime after midnight. About 1:30 Sunday morning, December the 7th, we were driving home in my convertible with the top down. Joe was sleeping in the corner. And as we drove up by Pearl Harbor, at that time the road that went from Honolulu to Wheeler Field was rather high up on the mountainside, so that we could look down at Pearl Harbor. And Joe was asleep, and as I looked down at Pearl Harbor, I saw so many ships, and they were lighted from stem to stern. This is the practice that they had on weekends of lighting up the ships. And this week, and the ships that seemed to me that I had never seen so many ships in my life at Pearl Harbor, all lighted up. And I nudged Joe away, and I said, Joe, look down there. Did you ever see so many ships at Pearl Harbor? And he looked over sleep, and he said, boy, we're a target application. And he went back to sleep. And we drove for another 15 minutes. About 2 o'clock, I got to Wheeler Field. And we were sleeping in barracks for the pilots, which overlooked the first hangar at Wheeler Field and the ramp where the aircraft were lined up, wingtip to wingtip. And I was about 8 o'clock, or a few minutes before 8 o'clock in the morning. I was in the latrine, which overlooked the first hangar and the parking apron where all the aircraft were parked. And I was looking out the window, and I saw this airplane dive down and pull up sharply and drop a bomb. And this huge orange flame come up. And I thought to myself, boy, the Navy is really getting realistic. And the reason for this is because on weekends, the Navy used to both beat us up with their airplanes, wake in the base, and they had little flour sacks that they would throw out of the cockpit, and that was supposed to be bombs. We would do the same thing. But of course I knew immediately that this was not a Navy maneuver. That this, as the plane pulled up, I saw these 2 red meatballs on the wing of the airplane, and I knew it was Japanese. And I yelled down the hallway that we were being attacked by the Japs. I was wearing pajamas, and I put on my GI boots, which were the type of boots the pilots used at that time, and I had been issued a web belt with a 45 caliber ammunition pistol, and I strapped that on, and I ran down towards the flight line to see if I could salvage some of the aircraft that were not on fire. As the aircraft, it would explode. As the aircraft exploded, they would ignite the plane next to them, like a row of Chinese firecrackers. And I was able, with 3 other pilots, to secure 3 P-36s. The P-36 was the predecessor of the P-40, which was a much more popular and well-known aircraft. The P-36 had very little firepower. It had a 150 caliber firing through the prop and a 30 caliber firing through the prop. We were able to load our aircraft with ammunition during a lull on the attack, and we took off in formation, 4 pilots and 4 P-36s, and we were directed by radio to go over to Bellows Field, which was another Army base that was under attack. And as we climbed up towards the Kulal Mountains, we charged our guns. That means we put bullets in the chambers of the guns, and we were able to do this in the cockpit by pulling an arm back and then letting it slide forward, and it would put a bullet in the chamber. I did this with my 30 caliber, and I pulled the trigger, nothing happened. I pulled again, I pulled the trigger, nothing happened. My 30 caliber wouldn't fire. I pulled the 50 caliber, which was on my left side, back all the way to my ear, let it slide forward, and it started firing by itself without me pulling the trigger. So I had to keep this cocked back to keep from losing all of my ammunition. We were doing this in formation as we were flying towards Bellows Field. As we passed through the clouds about 5,000 feet, we got instructions to change our course to Kaneohe Bay, because now Kaneohe Bay was under attack, that naval station there. So we diverted towards Kaneohe Bay, and about 9,000 feet we encountered a bunch of Japanese Zeros. And we just exploded in the process of trying to attack them and avoid being hit by them. And I saw this, one of our own aircraft, traveling in front of me a few hundred yards away, and pursuing it several hundred yards in back was a Zero. Well, when I saw this Zero, I had to lead him a lot of lengths in order for my bullets to intercept him. So I led him about 3 or 4 lengths of the air, the length of his airplane, and then I let the 50 caliber go forward, and it started firing by itself. And I saw puffs on the fuselage where the 50 caliber was striking the aircraft, and it started to smoke. And at that time, at that moment, and I'm speaking in my tiny periods of time, at that moment, another Jap Zero came head-on towards me as though it wanted to ram me. And I pulled up very sharply to avoid being rammed by this aircraft. He was not firing at me, and I assumed he had used up his ammunition. I later found out that this pilot, who was still alive 10 years ago, had tried to ram me because his engine was quitting. He did not think he was going to make it back to the carrier, so he was going to take somebody down, me. He did make it back to the carrier, and as he landed the carrier, one of the cylinders fell out of his engine. Well, as I pulled up to avoid him, my aircraft was hit. My canopy was blown off, my rudder cable was severed, my hydraulic system was severed, and I had very little control over the airplane. And I kind of tumbled down into the clouds about 5,000 feet trying to gain control. I finally did gain control, and I was headed back to Wheeler Field and ducking in and out of the clouds because I was pretty vulnerable by this time. And fortunately, the Japanese left and were headed back towards their carrier. I didn't know this. As I cleared the clouds, headed back towards Wheeler Field, my squadron commander, who was the lead of our group, Lieutenant Sanders, came up beside me, and he saw how badly damaged my aircraft